Good evening, LEC community. My name is Edgar Palacios, and I am the founder of the Latinx Education Collaborative, as well as Revolución Educativa. Our work collectively is to create the necessary conditions for the advancement of Latino youth. And today we're going to be discussing an important topic around supporting immigrant students. I'm excited to join you all this evening, and I'm looking forward to having a conversation with our wonderful panelists, which we will bring on stage now. Hi, Graciela. Hi, Christy. Hi, Arturo. Hi, Nubia. How are y'all doing this evening?
Doing great.
Fantastic. Yes. Before we get started, we're going to go ahead and introduce ourselves. And so I'm going to kick it over to Christy. Christy, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Christy Moreno. I'm the Community Advocacy and Impact Officer with Revolución Educativa. REVID is a Latino education advocacy organization working both in the state of Kansas and the state of Missouri. We also engage in local, state, and federal policy specific to education issues and to family health. It is a pleasure to be here in the greatest of companies this evening as we, share our perspectives on this very important topic.
Thank you, Christine. Welcome. Graciela.
All right. My name is Graciela Miranda. I currently reside in Indiana, but I'm from Chicago. I have 20 years in elementary education experience and then in high school and also in college. So I've been teaching for a while. I've always been working with the community of Latinos in Title I, so I'm excited to be part of this team and showcase some ideas that we have and brainstorm and collaborate with each other.
Thank you for being here, Graciela. Nubia.
Hey, buenas noches. Hey, everybody. My name is Nubia Stepes. My pronouns are she, her, ella, and I am currently in Kansas City, Kansas. I am with the Kansas-Missouri Dream Alliance. I do immigration advocacy, community organizer, organizadora de la comunidad. And yeah, I'm here to share what I know.
Awesome. Thank you for being with us, Nubia. Arturo.
Buenas tardes a todos. Thank you guys for having me here. My name is Arturo Moreno. I'm a general education social worker. Currently work at FL Schlegel High School for Kansas City, Kansas Public Schools. And again, thank you for inviting me on. I'm excited to talk about a lot, a group that's very near and dear to my heart.
Absolutely. And we appreciate that you accepted the invitation. We have limited time, so we'll jump right in. As an organization, we've been hearing a lot of kind of commentary in the community around fear within families, within students about the incoming administration. And so I'm curious, based on your perspective, are you hearing that same fear? What does it look like from your community perspective? And Nubia, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so I guess one of the extra hats I wear too, I'm also a legal secretary for an immigration law firm. And we've been busy. We've been busy with calls. Of course, with the new administration coming through, there's always the unknowns. With this one, it's like, no, it's a lot of knowns. So one, right now, at least for our community, in the sense of immigration, we're hearing a lot of fear, a lot of what happens, what ifs. So we're trying to collect that and say, we don't know what's happening. So one, we have heard it is very chaotic out there in regards to what's going to happen. And in another little sense, I'm not hearing a lot as fear within like my own group. As I'm also a mom, like cuando voy a la iglesia, cosas así. I'm not hearing a lot of that. But then I hear my daughter and her peers who are just, again, the unknown.
Thank you, Nubia. Graciela, what are you seeing?
I think I'm also seeing the panic and the fear, but it's a more gentle tone than I think the first time. I think because I'm in the high school now, so I think they're processing multi things at the same time, graduation and rumors. And one thing that I think my students keep on presenting is more of how will this impact my short term? They're not looking maybe a year or two ahead. So they're looking at just the next couple of months, what's going to happen. Do I still get to graduate? Do I still get to go to school? Do I still get to see my friends, right? How does this impact maybe like I'm working to provide some additional funds for my family? What does that look like? So they're a little bit all over the place, but I think different subgroups are showing it differently too. So it just depends on where their home country is from. And so I think they have different concerns for different reasons.
Thank you, Graciela. Arturo, what about you?
Yeah, I'm going to branch off of Graciela. I feel like it's not as, I feel like the fear isn't showing as much as the first time that with the administration came on. And I think students are really curious. They do want to know, they do have questions about what's going on, like in their personal lives with their families. They do ask, can we have, a Know Your Rights seminar? Can we have someone who, an immigration attorney come, because they do have questions. But I can tell you that a few years back, it definitely felt heavier than this time around.
Thank you, Arturo. Chrissy, does this resonate with what you're seeing as well?
It resonates with what I'm hearing. I am hearing in smaller circles, right, where we have different support groups with the organization and different, WhatsApp groups of people that are just, getting together and that have known each other for a while. There is fear. There are questions. I have been also part of a lot of coalition conversations. And I do want to bring up the fact that, we have to acknowledge and respect the feelings and the worries that people have. I have heard some people say, nothing has happened, calm down, but I want to be very mindful of not canceling people's emotions, people's fear. It's very real. Some families have already experienced separation in the past and have a lot of trauma that they've been through. So this is definitely something that we need to address and embrace carefully and try to support with, just very mindful of the way we're communicating and not necessarily with fear, but with intention and everything that we share. So yes, I would agree that it doesn't seem as prevalent as the first round that we had of this president. Someone said, the 1.0 version, but the 2.0 version comes with more experience, comes having been there and building a team that is. I'm a little more worried about the team that is being built.
Thank you, Christy. And I want to acknowledge that there are some members from the community that are joining us. Edwin Perez, hello, LEC, saludos desde Baltimore, Maryland. Thank you for hosting this critical meeting. We have Sofia Gonzalez. Thank you for holding space for this issue. And then she goes on to say, almost 100% of my students are first gen from Mexico. Students are stepping forward with concerns of their undocumented parents with the incoming administration. Arturo, what are some of your concerns more globally about this issue? What is it that you're worried about the most when it comes to the incoming administration?
Good question. I think just like in the political climate and the social climate, I think the nation being divided on issues, being anti-immigration and a campaign running on mass deportation. And for me, it's hurtful because, I work in a school that's predominantly Hispanic Latino, and there's a big percentage of students who are Hispanic Latino newcomers and immigrants. And there's they're amazing kids. I really would invite anybody who feels that way to just come to my school and meet these kids and talk to these families, and they would see that really the solution is not, getting people out of here. Todo lo contrario, it's being welcoming, being inclusive, being inviting. And so to me, it's just, it just hits close to home because, my parents are immigrants. I'm a first generation student here, and it's just that story is so close to near and dear to my heart. And it just, for me, I think the students could really speak on their realities, on what they're facing. And so I invite anybody to come and be with me and be part of that.
Thank you. Graciela, how about you?
think that twofold. One, I'm very concerned about bringing more educators into the field, right? So there's going to be some turbulent times, turbulent things that we're going to have to do that we've never had to do before as educators. So being more trauma informed, being able to handle these situations, being able to support our parents, regardless of our political stance, being able to go the extra mile to provide comfort for our families and communities, and challenge some of the status quo and the policies that are there. So I think as educators, we're going to be looking at a field that is going to change too. We all know that having an education, going to college is really important, but with the new maybe laws and policies that are coming up, how do we channel that? How do we make that possible for our students? Because we know that knowledge is power. And so we want them to be able to achieve their goals and dreams. So as educators, we're going to have a big learning curve. How do we navigate these times ahead in collaboration with our communities? How would we use them to leverage what they have, right? And how do we advocate for our families and staff members locally and also state and nationally and federally, right?
Thank you, Graciela. Nubia, what's going to be the work of advocates and advocacy professionals in the next couple of years?
So surviving. I hate saying that, porque we're also humans and we need joy, we need to live our life, and it's 4 years of our lives. Pero in a sense, like we're gonna be putting out fires left and right. I know Graciela mentioned, like we also have like education, like what's going to happen to the education, the DI, like so many layers of it. So it's just going to be putting fires and moving. Arturo also mentioned, like, what about our newcomers? Like a newcomer for, so a little bit of me, I came over when I was 3 years old. Obviously I spent my whole life here, now you could say I have 30 years plus here, but a newcomer, it's going to be a different immigration process for his newcomers, not the same as how when I came over. So, giving the correct information to those newcomers, while also trying to advocate for making a plan, while also trying to see, okay, I know we did this in the 1T. Christy, we call it 1T now, 1T and 2T.
Yeah.
In the 1T, the KCK did a whole, like, Dr. Lane, I think, was in. She's like, we're going to have everybody update their contact info. We did a lot of power of attorneys. Pero as a mother, I saw a lot of stories too after those powers of attorney. I'm like, man, we have to work in that too. So every solution we're gonna have to trickle it here, there, that moviéndole poquitos to see it works for each individual. So we're gonna be very busy the next 4 years trying to keep in community.
Chrissy,
but also find joy out of somewhere. Find joy.
I think finding joy is going to be definitely part of the work in creating spaces for joy and environments for joy. I think is going to be as important as the rest of the work that needs to happen. Christy, from your perspective, you also work with the National Parents Union, and you're also seeing a lot of these conversations at the national level. What do you think? What are those folks talking about as it pertains to the next couple of years?
I think that at every level, national, state, local, and personally, with the work that I engage in, student safety is the number one priority. A third of the calls that we get through our assistance line have to do with violence in schools. We know that bullying, cyberbullying, hate speech has been a thing always. It has definitely increased post-COVID. And right now, we're already getting reports, and I assume several of you have seen in national news, students getting text messages that are racist, that are scary, that are very targeted. And so I think we're really looking at how are we going to amp up our school safety policies, and also seeking resolutions at a school board level, right? Like, how are schools, what is going to be their safety plan? What is going to be their updated policy now that we have this threat? And so definitely the conversation around working with families to understand who they're going to call if their kid comes home and, you know, starts sharing. And sometimes children don't share, but parents, we have to, you know, be very aware, be very conscious, check in with our kids every day and see how, just kind of taking the pulse and having those conversations. Oftentimes parents say, well, I don't want to have a conversation because what if I scare them with asking the question, right? I just want to say kids are already having these conversations in the classroom. Kids are very well connected. They're consumers of news 24/7, almost more than we are as parents. And so I think the things we're talking about is, what are the safety policies in schools? How are schools going to protect their students? And how are we going to make sure their children have that access to communicate and report if they're victims of hate speech, of bullying, or of just harassment?
Thank you, Christy. I want to bring up this comment by Dr. Marler. Dr. Marler, thank you for being here. Thank you for offering this opportunity. I am trying to coach and guide administrators in this area, proactively planning, reviewing practices with secretaries, contingency plans in the case of mass raids at workplaces / shopping centers, social work support for students, EAP support for staff members, getting parents red cards and legal advice, etc. Certainly for the students, but also for their staff. I'm curious, what are important parts of that safety plan? Maybe I'll kick that question to you. What does it look like for schools and districts to create safe environment for students?
Yes. So one of the things that I see, or that I used to see, is having a lot of know your rights. Because speaking from somebody like somebody that knows when people are detained, like, you lose a lot of time finding important information that maybe we don't share, like, oh, who has the last passport, or who was the last visa number, what was the last information for court. So having the know your rights, having those talks within your family. For schools, I agree, make sure everybody updates their contact information. Make sure this, as a parent, I would like to know that my children, if I were not to pick them up, where are they going to go? Who are you going to call? Who's, the next person you're going to call? But also know that my kindergarten rides the bus. So if she comes home and it's home alone, that's another issue. Like, what's she going to do there? So yeah, I know she mentioned red cards. Red cards are great. It's like a standard. It's so just real quick, red card. Yeah, red cards. They're free by the immigrant legal resource centers. The little cartitas that say, hey, just a quick tip, because once you're in a situation where any person in power, a police, ICE, your brain kind of freezes. Even now, to me, like, my brain freezes whenever I'm near any immigration officer. But just calm, remain, read your card, and try to, like, slow down your brain so you can answer correctly, or maybe not answer, because the best is to remain quiet. So yeah, I hope I answered your question.
No, I appreciate that, Nubia, and I appreciate you also explaining what red cards are for those that may not know. Graciela, how do you see these kind of safety plans being implemented in schools and also as an educator?
I've talked to a couple of districts in the last week or two, and everybody's kind of going about it a little bit different. The red cards is something that everyone's getting their hands on and distributing them. I think one of the things that some of the school districts are doing are really uniting with their community members. So that would be church, places like what you guys have. We have different food pantries and so forth that are also getting a little bit more support. One thing that parents are concerned about is now leaving their home. And so they're, the ability for them to move around, they're really being judicious about how much, where to go, how long they're taking, et cetera. And so one of the things that one of the districts around me was going to do is host a parent night with legal advice. And a lot of parents said, we're not going. Like, anything that I have to go where I'm going to be targeted is a no for me. So we're trying to find different ways to be able to share information, but that's going to have to be more through grassroots levels with our community partners versus the school, because parents just don't feel comfortable giving information, being present in activities that are advertising, know your legal rights, or etc. So we're learning how to play around that.
Thank you, Arturo. I'm curious, as a social worker, what kind of supports do you need, not just from your district or your or kind of employer, but also from the community to support some of the efforts that you will be leading over the next couple of years?
So, I mean, so from my end, and I'm talking from, working in the school system, like some of the challenges that we see, it directly goes to like language barriers, and for parents and students coming in the door on day one, so they're struggling with the enrollment process. And for example, like in my building, like we don't have an interpreter, so like they're relying on the few bilingual staff, to help out with that process. And so I think a big, so I know like schools, aside from being, safe zones and protecting students and families in these extreme situations, I think we really need to do more to really ensure that families feel welcome. I think from day one that they're arriving, and I'll tell you that personally, I'm working very closely with Hispanic and Latino newcomers and immigrants, and a big initiative that I've started alongside with my colleague. Her name is Alexandra Marksberry, who I hope one day you guys get to meet soon, and we can share a little bit more of what we're doing together. But I think it goes beyond. So just implementing like a safe space for students, for parents. Part of what we're doing is we did a support group that then became a registered school club. That's morphing more into a youth development program. And so we're really doing this again because the students in the building need to know that there is people, even if it's not many, but that there's a person out there that's looking out for them and trying to pull, all the established organizations that are here supporting, Hispanic, Latino students, and bringing important topics to the table, like know your rights and just many other important issues, that there's someone in the building that's bringing this information to the students, that's creating a platform for students, for parents to get the information.
I appreciate that. And also,
I appreciate that too. Gracias. That's very important. I know. Yes, I think I would give you a hug if I was there.
Virtual hugs allowed. You're a language access professional, and clearly this is a moment in time where information is important, and information in native languages is important. What are your recommendations for school leaders, education leaders, educators to improve the quality or the access to language access efforts within your classrooms?
I like to pull it out a little bit and think more of effective communication, right? Because ultimately language access should mean effective communication. And effective communication requires relationship building. And I think now more than ever, we as advocates and as nonprofit organizations supporting schools, supporting families and students, need to be really talking and elevating the need for that very smart and caring and knowledgeable relationship building with students and their families. Beyond the typical engagement, we really need to start pushing for getting to know families better now more than ever. I know that in there's some school districts that in the past have put out some toolkits on rapid response in these types of situations. Arkansas has one that really is preparing educators and administrators for, unfortunately, what we don't want to see, but we need to be able to think ahead, right? And what I'm reading in all of those reports is the importance of having strong, authentic connections and relationships with students and their parents in their language of preference. So that's what I'm most interested in, is when advocating and talking to administrators and educators, is now is the time to really, really, really build those strong relationships, so that once we have that strong relationship, we can start asking families, are you prepared? What do you need? Do you have your powers of attorney ready? Where are your documents? Are your documents at hand? In case of separation, who are your kids going to stay with? Like really, really talking about, let's develop a plan. Because it's smart, right? It's smart in life to have a plan for everything we do as families. And so really that relationship piece that builds that effective communication, two-way communication, being available to parents and caregivers when they have the time, right? When it's their open time to be available. We know we have families that work 2-3 jobs. They work night shifts, they work morning shifts. So really making ourselves available and being flexible to meet their schedule and to really respond to their needs and questions. So from the perspective of effective communication, I think that's very important. And also really not relying on computer generated only translation, because there's a lot that is lost when it comes to emotional intelligence, when it comes to sensitivity of the message. So always make sure, if you're going to use an assistance software for translation, make sure you have a native speaker who is biliterate to actually read through and make sure that nothing comes across as harsh, as disrespectful, or as insensitive.
Thank you, Christy. And I'm curious, actually, this question I'm going to open up to everybody. Clearly, we're also in a moment in time where misinformation and disinformation are prevalent. And so when educators are looking for reliable resources on this conversation, who are you looking towards as a reliable source of information for this work? And anybody can jump in.
Yeah, I want to say, I don't know how political we get, but because I could get very political. But one of the things to just know that I want everybody to know is that fear is going to be a tool that this administration uses. Fear is going to do a lot of work for them. Fear is going to shake our world upside down. So reliable information is number one. So it's very, very important to make sure you get reliable information before we start disseminating, oh, did you hear this? Or did you see that? Or stuff like that. For me, the Kansas Missouri Dream Alliance belongs to United We Dream Network. So any like stuff like that, we kind of go to them and we get emails from them. I also get information from AILA, the American Immigration Lawyers Association. We also have really good lawyers here in Kansas City. Sharma Crawford, the clinic, they're nonprofit. They have great information. So kind of go through all my little due diligence and through the stuff. And then I could share if it's accurate or not. In regards to like what you hear on the news and kind of around. That's one.
Well, I second United We Dream. Unidos also puts out great information as a civil rights organization, and others. And, you know, being part of several coalitions here in our region, we have talked about making sure we have somewhat of a unified message, so that, you know, people here in our areas that identify some of the organizations also and that are trusted organizations can share that aligned and unified message, sharing each other's messages as well, and not just creating our own messaging that might conflict. Another thing that I think is very important is talking about media literacy with people in avenues just like this one, right? Where, you know, we know a lot of Latinos, specifically younger generations, I'd say, but older generations too, are consuming a lot of their news through TikTok. And we know that can be, say, sensationalized. It can be, you know, whatever it gets to get a like, whatever it gets to get a heart, whatever it gets to get people connected is what's catching people's eye. But we really want to make sure that we talk about media literacy with students, with families, and everyone in the community, to really make sure that we are consuming information that is reliable, that is trustworthy, and that we actually can see the consistent message across channels, across organizations, at every level, right? National and local as well. So looking for those messages that are unified and that are consistent, and that are not necessarily trying to scare people, but to inform, is going to be very, very important.
One thing I do want to say to it, and kind of what I was saying earlier, I just really think it's important that there has to be someone inside, like for example, of the schools, that is inviting, like I said, the existing and established organizations to come and speak to the students, to the families, to the staff. We should, we should be calling Revolución Educativa to come in and into our schools. We should be calling organizations like AIR, and so in a big way, I think the part of the responsibility, I think, is in the few bilingual professionals and educators within the buildings. I think it's our responsibility to make a stand and create that platform, collaborate more with outside organizations to really bridge that gap between the system and like the needs of the immigrant students and families.
I also think too that some of our students are going to be the ones that are going to be looking for more of the information than the parents. The parents might have a lot on their plate. So I can also envision of having hotline numbers, right? Like, it's just the same way that they put posters on the back of the bathroom stalls. Like if you have a crisis, call whatever number, right? To be able to share that information with our students so that they can also understand that they have advocacy power, that they are also able to get the information that they need. So in case, for example, a lot of our school districts are going into like a lot of digital newsletters. Well, our parents aren't always technology literate, right? But being able to, like you said, being able to disseminate that information in their language, maybe through voice dialers, maybe through the same, in our old way of handing out flyers to families, posting things so that in case there's that misinformation, or sometimes they don't update those emails, or they don't update phone numbers and they don't get the information, that hopefully they'll be able to see this type of media and that they feel comforted that we see them. We know that they're going through these times and that they have some outlets to be able to seek on their own in case they don't find a familiar face at school or somewhere safe.
Thank you all for your responses. I'm going to navigate through some community comments here quickly, just to acknowledge and also to share. We have Brendan, who says that's a great point about having a native speaker double check your translation of documents. I'll ask a question about that a little bit later in the conversation. We also have Brenda, listening from Liberty, Missouri. Is there a website where we can find a list of resources in the KC area to help students? One thing that we'll be committed to is actually we'll have the video recording of this, as well as kind of a transcript and some of the resources that were shared on this call, just listed out. So we'll make sure to put that in our links and then also have that on our site. Let's see. Dr. Marler brings up an interesting point. I've also heard that parents are reluctant to attend any school events right now, but especially legal rights workshops. They certainly won't sign an attendance sheet. Also, refrain from announcing a parent night on social media. It blew up in Edmondsville, Washington, and drew many ugly and bigoted comments. I'm in Chicago, but heard it through the grapevine. I am curious, and this impacts our work directly, right? We are events-driven organizations. We enjoy bringing community members together, and we're hearing feedback, right? There's people on one side of the house. It's like, don't do that. We're going to create more harm than good. There are also people on the other side of the house that are saying, listen, we're going to have to create spaces of joy and safety within community. So from your perspective, how do you navigate how we build community during this time?
So after the election, we had two healing sessions, one online and one in person. The second one was art therapy. And we call upon our allies on our allies to help us with that. Just as we did with Black Lives Matter when they called upon us to help kind of navigate security wise. We called Search KC and we're like, hey, can you help us with logistically? And they're like, they're trained in de-escalating. So in issue, like when we have like an open, right, like where we put an address and time and location, stuff like that, we call up on our allies and ask that. It's funny because I know Graciela mentioned it and other commenters mentioned like how we're hesitant to go to schools. Unfortunately, in the school district that I'm at, well, not me, but my husband, I've seen it because I'm very vocal, but my husband's more of a calm, chill guy. He doesn't go to a lot of events, but when we were at a different school district, like he was there all the time. He's like, I just don't vibe with it. There's something. So it's how you also like welcome your parents, I would say, because even if someone doesn't come up to me and say hi, I'm the one that's like hi, blah, blah, blah. But my husband's more like, just don't feel like I'm in the right place. I'm like, but our children are here, so if you're feeling like this, then what does it mean for our children? But they take after me, so they're fine. But so yeah, it's the welcoming part. As far as safety, I would always, it is our responsibility to keep our community safe, especially if we're doing events that are geared to helping or education. Like I said, I think it does fall upon us to make sure security wise that all those check boxes are marked off.
I definitely think that we need to continue providing variety, right? Whether it's virtual, whether it's in person, maybe planning for more of the same but smaller, right? Instead of expecting 50 people, maybe saying 10 people, and we're going to meet, at a coffee shop, or maybe in our space, or maybe in a church, or maybe in our homes where we can actually talk and share. Whether it's, the know your rights, or whether it's check-ins with people. But here's where I want to come back to those relationship building and effective communication, right? Like school districts are very used to sending mass emails that are, they're not individualized. They're not very, personal. They're not very authentic in a way. They're just general information that goes to everyone. We're going to have to really be smart about being a little bit more flexible with communications. I was talking to a school district a couple weeks ago that was doing a parent event night, right? And they were publishing a flyer, and the flyer literally called out, like, we're specifically going to talk about, know your rights for undocumented families. And I was like, no. And so as nonprofit organizations that do this work, that are at the front lines, that are having these conversations, I think it's also our responsibility to coach and give some advice to those that are working on the communications field, specifically in education, because we really have to be very sensitive to not, outing families, not making anybody uncomfortable, not calling certain things out, and really honing in on that individual communication. School districts are going to have to look at those policies. I know as an advocacy organization, we've received calls from teachers that have been scolded for having direct contact with families, through WhatsApp instead of through, talking points or Class Dojo or whatever. That's not going to be the safe space for families, for some families. I'm not going to generalize, but for some families. So we're going to have to really pivot and look for that authenticity and that personal connection outside of those very specific systems and frameworks that systems have and institutions have used for quite a while now.
I had a question for Graciela. I know when I started organizing and moving more into schools, it's hard because I know in school districts, you have your regulations and your rules, what you can and cannot do. This, as we progress, we find out a little bit, it's easier, but I'm wondering how hard it is, within inside for your teachers, for your administration to kind of like break those barriers. Because to me, it'll be easy, like, oh, people go to school. parents are school. Let me just go there and do, but it's sometimes a lot of red tape. And sometimes we like, well, teachers need to do this and administrators need to do this. I'm like, well, they're already working hard to teach my child, which I appreciate. And then we also want them to do extra stuff. I'm like, oh, how hard is that,
Yeah. So what I usually try to do for my families is pair up events, right? So like we had a big futsal soccer tournament, right? They're two different sports, but we had a lot of families out there. Like those are great ways sometimes to invite our communities at work with our students to engage them into going to college and so forth. So we try to host community members that, can set up. And so that way it's not necessarily we're driving this agenda. We're kind of embracing what they like, what they enjoy. So we kind of build those relationships, we build community, we build conversations just outside of here's a parent teacher conference, or we're asking you to come to learn about blah, 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 right? So we will have sometimes events that we do Hispanic Heritage Month, but we had college showcase too for parents to get information. We had an immigration lawyer there as well, right? So we were trying to understand and feel and have our families know that we see them. We understand what they're going through. But like you said, we're not going to directly aim this night at that. We're going to have different, maybe vendors, college, FAFSA. Here's our, get to know your, the people in the school. Here are the counselors. You can call this person. She's our translator, just so that they can see a face and know that, we're going to slow down everything and we're going to give you undivided attention. Like you are important to us. And so those are like the small ways that we're trying to kind of build those relationships so that when parents do feel the need to be able to contact the school, they have a place to go. They know where to go. They know the school. They know that we care about them deeply. And so honestly, I think one of the things that a lot of schools are kind of worried about too is how much can we push and share with our parents and where, right? So is it on campus, outside of campus, those types of things. And I think because some of it is a little bit unknown this time around, I think we're all kind of, we want to be proactive to be able to have a plan in place, right? But then we also don't want to instill fear by giving so much information and causing that type of panic. So I think right now we are waiting to be led by our state directors to be able to know how this is going to look like and what we are covered with as educators and as administrators, and follow that lead. And within that space, being able to be creative to also give our parents and our community members the support that they need.
I appreciate that response, Graciela, and it ties into this question from Sophia. What does your panel of experts suggest for us teachers on the ground can do to best support Latino students and families beyond our building level protocol? So for teachers to go above and beyond, what are some of those expectations that you might have for them? Arturo, I'll kick it to you.
Yeah, well, so I believe in an educator's role is very crucial for newcomers and for immigrant students. From my perspective, being in the schools, I can tell you, and we can talk about this all day, but there isn't enough bilingual staff, and I'm going to make an emphasis: bilingual staff who care about this issue and this population, and so the result is a system that just isn't built to respond to the needs of immigrant students and families. But I believe it can be. It's just going to take it's going to take at least just one person in the building who cares, that is going to seek out to reach out to create a hardworking team that cares. And again, it starts from the inside of the school. I think you're going to hear me emphasize this again. Now more than ever, we need to be, inviting and collaborating with, established organizations to speak to family and staff. And it's just, I think, really that's ultimately how we're going to bridge that gap between, the needs and the needs of our students and what, as a school, as a system, what we're not meeting. And but I think there's hope, and I think it's going to take one person in the building who cares about these students, who genuinely loves these students, and is going to be reaching out to people who can support.
I think one of our strengths in our community that's an asset base is somos comunidad. We're going to be there for each other, right? So one may not want to go and advocate for themselves for whatever reasons. We have to build a community to take care of each other. So I think representation being more involved at our community government, our policies, all those things, board meetings. We're going to have to draw on the parents that we know that are willing to go and present at the board meetings and ask, what is our action plan? What is our crisis action plan? Because some parents might not want to go to that board meeting or might not be able to know how to express themselves or feel comfortable. But we have to start encouraging our parents and our families that have been in the community, that have maybe had children, that we know that we've built that relationship with. Like, we have to start also coaching them to start voicing their opinion. And as educators, Latinos, we also have to start going to more of the state policy, those types of meetings, to be able for them to know that we are championing, we are going to be the voice for our communities that don't necessarily feel comfortable sharing their voice, but we have to be the face of that.
I want to double tap on the importance of advocacy inside of schools, right? Coming from educators, coming from administrators, I would say bottom up, because we have not done enough work in that space. We have not done enough work in being the ones suggesting what policies need to be in place, what plans need to be in place, what we want to see, how we want to protect our students. Graciela, I don't know how much you know about Revolución Educativa, but we actually train and coach and have workshops where parents can prepare public comment. We accompany them to public comment. We ensure that there's an interpreter already scheduled to be there. And it's that accompaniment, right? Like that gives them that safe sense of confidence, that sense of safety, and knowing that there's people rallying around them, right? They're not alone. They're there with a group of people. And so we'd be happy to do any virtual trainings for any of you out there in different states, different school districts. More than happy to do that, as we're actually looking at what 2025 program is going to look for us. This is a great opportunity for us to be chatting with different educators, school administrators on what are the needs you're seeing, what are your students saying, how can we address the importance of giving access to people to advocate and voice their concerns. So definitely that is going to be important. I think going back to, I think, Graciela, you mentioned it too, being more trauma informed in this very specific situation, right? Being trauma informed on what immigrant families have been through. What does a mixed status family, what are their concerns? What are the risks, right? And, I wanted to ask Arturo, as you work with immigrant families and students, how do you make those connections? How do you build those relationships and create that sense of safety?
Yeah, and it's interesting because I did just see a comment about like creating safe spaces like student clubs and all that. Really, I think that's the core of the work I do, and so like I said, I began an initiative, a passion project, with one of my colleagues who's a counselor, and we make a great team. She's a counselor, I'm a social worker, and it's a great balance because we both, when we started our, at Schlegel, actually at the same time, we quickly saw that there's a need for supporting Hispanic newcomers and immigrants. And if you meet these students and just ask them, I mean, they'll tell you, they're honest. This group hasn't had much in terms of, being able to, or hasn't had much opportunity in terms of relating to staff, on a cultural level, with meeting bilingual staff, meeting staff that love and care about them and are seeking to empower them, so that they can have a voice, speak up on their opinions, and people that are just going to, encourage them to keep pushing, keep luchando, keep pursuing their dreams. And I think that's a big part of the work that we're doing is an initiative that is like I said, it started as a small support group, and it's grown. I mean, now we've created a space for 60 plus students who identify with the immigrant experience, and we have definitely reached out to a lot of community partners, invited them to the building to talk to our students, and we're recognizing their presence in the building. We're recognizing their contributions. We are encouraging them to, like I said, seguir luchando academically, and it's only about it's about community, and it's about celebrating. And so I think the bigger vision, like I said, it's working here at Schlegel. I know that this can be done at every high school. It's going to take one person, like I said, in their building that really loves and cares about these kids, and is going to take the time to be reaching out and creating and formalizing a program for these students.
Thank you, Arturo. And I want to acknowledge just Dr. Taylor Arnold's comment on that. I believe that getting to know your students is very important. Creating safe spaces, student clubs, etc., where students can connect with each other and share their voices. We have roughly 9 minutes left, so I'm going to take this opportunity to ask you the question around what's the most important piece of information that you want to get out today to our community?
To our community, or to our like maybe your student or teacher students?
I'm gonna create the space for whichever one of those constituencies you want to address.
Okay, so I really like this thing called "You have the right to remain silent." Like, you have the right to remain silent is a golden rule in my life. For our community, right? And then for our teachers, I want to say thank you so much for even, I just, by the sense of just maybe you watching this, there's like that in you, the one in you to help more, and I thank you. I thank you so much for caring about our students, because I think you mentioned like my kids go to school, so thank you so much for caring about our kids. And please reach out. There's so much information out there. For like, I'm thinking of my school district specifically. One tip is like just by even knowing like the relevant terminology, how to speak to our community, especially undocumented mixed status family. Just knowing that little bit would open up, be kind of alert that person as, oh, this person is an ally. This teacher's an ally, and I could trust them. And for those who are a little bit more advanced, come and talk to us. Use me as a resource, all of us as resources, text, emails, like, hey, I got this. What can I do? If I don't know the answer, I'll ask around and we'll find it. That is community, and we're here for you.
I would like to go back to the effective communication piece and the importance of messaging. I think that messaging needs to be very asset-based, right? So as we are talking about our communities and addressing uncertainties, I think it's a perfect opportunity also to highlight how powerful, how beautiful, how brilliant our immigrant and Latino students are, and really being very, very careful with what comes out of our mouths and out of our inboxes when we are talking about these topics, being very, very much asset-based, being very aware of the sensitivity of the message, and also not creating confusion, right? So really looking at how we're communicating, not just with families, but what are messages in general to the general public, so that people can see what our stance is, and also empowering to use this very just positive message about who we're protecting.
Go ahead.
I'll say, don't be afraid of change. Recognize your students, all of your students, and immigrants have been they are and they will always continue to be an integral part of, our community. And, students, all students deserve, access to quality education. And now more than ever, we need to unite. We need to ensure that regardless of legal status, that students, have hope, that they have access to all the opportunities to reach their academic goals, their career goals. And so as a Mexican American myself, I know we're currently contributing and we want to continue contributing more to society, but we do need help breaking down these unnecessary barriers. As a social worker, it's an ethical obligation, but as a human, it's a moral obligation.
I might cry a little bit. I really want to just share out with all the teachers that they're doing a great job. I know there are teachers that have come to me and they're crying. I'm going to cry too, right? Just what will happen to the students? What can I do? And they feel powerless. They feel like they don't know, maybe as a Caucasian woman, as a Caucasian man, how do I handle this? How do I cross that line? How do I don't know what they're going through. How do I develop a system, a plan? How do I care for them? They have all of these questions. And I think we also have to remember that our students are being affected, their families are being affected, but our colleagues are too. They care about these kids so deeply. They're not just students. For a lot of our colleagues, they are just like family, right? And so I think we need to definitely start thinking a lot about how we are going to socially, emotionally help our teachers as well as they're going through these hard times. I know that we have started those conversations at our building. Like, what does that look like when teachers need a breather, when they're crying, when maybe they come to school and that child that sat in the first row is no longer there and they don't have answers, and it's the second day, the third day, right? It's agonizing. So I think we have to start understanding that this is going to affect not just students, our Latino students, other students. Well, what happens if I'm of a different race and my friend's not there? My lab buddy's not there. I think this is really going to hurt the whole system. And I think we need to build that camaraderie with each other, with our school districts, within our school districts, with neighboring school districts. This can't be just a one-man show, right? We have to unite together, like you had said too, like with our other cultures, other races, their organizations, whoever we can, because this is not just about one race. It's going to affect all of us. So I like that you said there is hope because we have one another. We have, in numbers, there is power. And I think we have to learn how to use each other systematically and wisely.
Thank you for your responses to that question. I'm going to navigate through some comments here quickly. Kennedy asked, does the LEC offer media literacy courses or resources to support families in the KC area? Go ahead, Christy.
We have partnered in the past with the Kansas City Public Library, specific during Media Literacy Week. I think this is a great, thank you so much. I think we need to revamp and talk to the library, because it's a big group, right, of a coalition really advocating for media literacy. So thank you so much for the idea. Definitely need to bring those up and provide them virtually as well. So we have in the past, and I promise that we will in the future.
Thank you, Christy. Imani, who's a community member that we appreciate support. Bienvenidos, giving us the welcome. Thank you for being here today. We already got that one. My apologies. We have Edwin also sharing some resources. The NEA Hispanic Caucus has info to support immigrant educators and students. And I believe also the NEA Immigrant Justice site is available there. And then we will be compiling this information to share out with community as well. Let's see. Dr. Taylor Arnold saying, speak up, stand up, bring your chair to the table to create visibility, engage in courageous conversations to identify our needs. We can do it together. Sophia sharing some love. Thank you for honoring us as teachers. As a daughter of immigrants myself, my heart is breaking for my students. Yes, compassion, fatigue. We also have a couple more thank yous. Dr. Taylor Arnold, but thank you so much for having this courageous conversation. As well as I thought I saw a similar comment from Dr. Marler. Thank you so much for providing this group of panelists and for being unafraid to address this issue. I think many are feeling powerless and uncertain, and this dialogue offers a level of comfort and reassurance. And then we'll close on this question. And actually, I want to name something too. I think in 2020, I saw a report that roughly 14,000 educators in our country are also DACA recipients. And so it's maybe not just students that are going to be impacted by this, it's also your colleagues. And I think that's important, right? Like this is we're here to support students and also recognizing the fact that there are people that you work with that may be directly impacted by what's to come. And so how do you create a space for appreciating that and recognizing some of the work that needs to go around that? The question that is up is, how do you build capacity in school, staff, and admin and encourage them to get more vested in our Latinx students?
I mean, our kids are 28% of the children, like the population of kids. It's only growing. We're the fastest growing demographic. I mean, we're already late trying to catch up with the needs of our Latino students. I think, like I said, acknowledging our multi-talented, globally competitive kids is very important. I know every teacher wants to see their students succeed and be happy and healthy. So that asset-based communication, that true, authentic relationship building is going to be super important. I see Dr. Felicia Torres with a comment here that we had mentioned earlier. Funny, but I want to say it. Yes, we have to encourage and reach out to parents to make sure that we have the right number. I know some kiddos like to go in there in the apps and change the numbers and put their number as their parents' number. It happens. Kids are playful like that. So make sure that we are reaching out to our families, to parents, to caregivers, to ensure that we have the right information for them.
And Dr. Torres just making the comment, know your rights regardless of status. Knowing your rights regardless of status is important. Schools are safe spaces for kids and their safety is priority. Have parents update emergency contact is helpful. I want to also name, Arturo, you said this, but I want to double down on this. It is a right for young people, children, kids to receive a quality education regardless of status. And so it's not just the right thing to do, but it is a civil right that we must honor.
14th Amendment. Yeah, our 14th Amendment.
Let's see. All right. A couple more comments before we exit. Imani saying support our future Latinx teachers. Absolutely. Our young people are our future teachers, and so we must keep them safe at all costs. Dr. Torres, thank you all so much for sharing. Nikki, good to see you here. Thank you all so much. Very resourceful and confirming. And I think that it is for the comments. And so we have arrived. We're a little over time. So I want to thank again our panelists for taking time out of their busy schedules to be here with this evening to answer some of these questions. This is a reminder that this is the first of many conversations that we will have both virtually and in person to address these issues and to ensure that we are keeping current with the issues as they continue to develop. But ultimately, our work here is to support our young students and making sure that they have access to the quality education that they deserve. So thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate you all being here.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you all.
Thank you for inviting me.
And thank you, community, for joining us this evening. We'll continue these conversations. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
It was like us in different ways. We're sitting there like in the arena in Las Vegas.
When I started this LEC community,